She was a fighter. She got through cancer. She was determined to live. But her own stepmother would see that this little girl would never grow up. Hello, true crimers. This is the case of Zahra Baker. Viewer discretion is advised. This story begins all the way in Australia, specifically in Wagga Wagga, Australia. I'm hoping that's how you pronounce that. On November 16th, 1999, Adam Baker and Emily Dietrich welcomed their first baby girl into the world. They would name her Zahra, and she was the perfect, sweetest little angel. A little baby they hoped would grow into a kind and adventurous young woman. But right after her birth, her mother Emily started suffering from postpartum depression, something that's obviously quite relevant in the news right now with the Lindsay Clancy case. Something that doesn't honestly get enough attention, that isn't getting the awareness it deserves, especially right now. It should be getting more attention than what it's actually getting. But for Emily, the signs were there, and they were there early. Knowing she would be unable to properly care for Zahra, she actually ends up separating from Adam and gives him full custody of Zahra. The last time Emily would ever see her little girl was when Zahra was 8 months old. I don't know if there was if there was supposed to be some kind of actual visitation thing set up, legally speaking. I'm not sure, but I just know that she was no longer involved in Zahra's life after she was about 8 months old. Adam would eventually move to Queensland around 2004 because he had gotten a new job working for a sugar mill. And then in 2005 is when Zahra's horrors started, really. Zahra Baker started to get really sick and had to visit the hospital. Sadly, she would be diagnosed with bone cancer. The cancer would then spread to her lungs, where she also was diagnosed with lung cancer. Zahra would lose her left leg to amputation because of the cancer and the treatment, so she was given a prosthetic leg. She also had significant damage to her lungs, and she had partial hearing loss that was permanent. This little girl, at just 5 years old, was going through one of the worst things a person could go through. But she pushed through and she fought. Zahra had to learn about resilience at a very early age. And because of her desire to live, because of her strength, because of her fight, she would beat the cancer. She went into remission around 2008. She was going to live. She was going to survive. She was going to be able to grow up and live a full life. She was given a second chance to get through school, have a career, maybe marry and have her own family one day. Zahra was this incredibly outgoing and friendly young girl, even at just 10 years old. Because of her battle with cancer, she was known to be one of the bravest little kids you would ever meet. Zahra also loved being outside. She loved plants and nature in general. She was as kind to nature as she was to people. She was sweet. She was funny. She was loved by all of her fellow students when she was in an actual school. Zahra had a vibrance to her, and friends came easy. She was going to make the most of her second chance. But as it turns out, her second chance at life would be short lived. Not because of cancer, but because of pure evil. Adam Baker, now a single father, began to talk to women online. Around 2007 or so, he starts to use this new, 3D virtual chat room. I mean, I was around back then, during the era of Yahoo and AOL chat rooms, but I don't specifically remember 3D virtual ones, but apparently they were a thing. So he started having a conversation with a woman who actually lived in North Carolina here in the States. Her name was Elisa Fairchild. I guess they hit it off pretty good because Adam ultimately makes the decision to take Zahra and move to the United States to be with Elisa in North Carolina. Even though her birth mother, Emily, was not really involved in her life anymore, Adam still never told her he was moving their daughter to a new country. Emily had no idea that Zahra was even in the States until she learned about the horrors that occurred to her daughter. Adam and Zahra would specifically move to Hickory, North Carolina. It's located in the western part of the state, about 60 miles northwest of Charlotte. Hickory has a population of roughly 45,000 people. It was a small enough community that it wouldn't overwhelm Adam and Zahra living in this totally different world. Zahra would be enrolled at Hudson Elementary School in 2008, but then would transfer to Granite Falls Elementary School. But by 2009, she is transferred back to Hudson Elementary to complete the fourth grade. But sometime around early 2010 or so, Elisa, her now stepmother, would contact the school to say that Zahra is being removed from traditional school and would now be homeschooled. Now, there's no real evidence that Zahra was actually homeschooled at home. You see, Zahra had gone to school a few times with a black eye, prompting some of her teachers to actually go to her home out of concern. This then led to Child Protective Services being called. There were four different CPS complaints filed by the school and also by Zahra's family that were not her dad and stepmom. Through these four different open case files alleging abuse in the house, CPS caseworkers visited their home a total of 7 times. However, each case was eventually closed because they could not find any evidence of physical abuse in the house, despite Zahra being seen with black eyes on multiple occasions. CPS failed here, completely failed. Had Zahra been removed from the home, had they seen the obvious signs of abuse, there's a good chance that Zahra would be alive to this day. But sadly, she is not. The last time anyone other than her father and stepmom can claim they saw Zahra alive was on September 22nd, 2010. On that day, she, along with her stepmom Elisa, entered a furniture store to look around and do some shopping. It would later be the employees of that store who would confirm to police they saw Zahra, but the investigators could find no more evidence or witnesses or anybody who saw Zahra after that day. Then, at 5:30 in the morning on October 9th, 2010, the Hickory police received a 911 call from Elisa, stating that there was a small fire behind their home. Elisa said, quote, "My husband works for a tree maintenance company and our backyard is on fire. We've got big mulch piles and wood piles, firewood and stuff," end quote. Police arrive at the fire and it's put out. They smell gasoline coming from Adam's work truck, and then they find, kind of randomly, a ransom note. The note was actually meant for Adam's boss at the time, named Mark Coffey. It stated that these people had his boss's daughter, that they had abducted her, and were now demanding $1 million in cash for her safe return. So police speed over to Mark Coffey's house, and they learn that his daughter is home, safe and sound, and that absolutely nothing out of the ordinary was happening at their home, except for right now, when police come over to tell him there's a ransom note for his daughter, asking for $1 million. It's all very confusing. It's also quite frightening, I'm sure, for him. But the police close out this ticket, so to speak. But then at about 2 p.m. the following day, another 911 call is made. This time it's Adam Baker, and he says to them, quote, "Hey, how are you doing? I need police. The police were out here last night after finding a ransom note for my boss's daughter. I got up a little while ago, and it appears they took my daughter instead of my boss's daughter." He goes on to say that he last saw his daughter Zahra at about 2:30 a.m. while she was asleep in bed. He then goes on to say, quote, "I don't know if they set a fire in the yard to distract us to go out and then they snuck in the door, or I don't know. Somebody had put gas in my company's truck that I drove for work. They left the ransom note on the company vehicle to my boss saying that they had his daughter and that his son was next. My daughter's coming into puberty, so she's in that brooding stage, so we only see her when she comes out, when she wants something." End quote. Adam goes on to tell police that he doesn't see his daughter much due to his work schedule. By the time he gets home from work, Zahra is already in bed because she goes to bed early, according to him. It's actually Elisa who sees her more than anybody. This is when police learned from other family members, neighbors, and former teachers of Zahra's that there had been this ongoing abuse in the house that was looked at, quote unquote, by CPS and was all cleared out. It was unclear to the witnesses who was actually inflicting the abuse on Zahra. It could have been both parents for all they knew, but again, Elisa is the one who has a more active role with Zahra. She's the one that has seen more with Zahra. Elisa also had other children from previous relationships that weren't living with them. So they are starting to think that this whole ransom note thing with the fire was all some bizarre way of distracting police away from looking at the actual parents here. This note implicating the boss's daughter was the victim of this might make police think an outside source had taken Zahra in this situation. Yet the allegations of physical abuse in their home would instead have police zero in on those that lived with Zahra, Elisa and Adam Baker. They learn her birth mother still lives in Australia and has had no contact with Zahra or Adam since her daughter was 8 months old. But this is actually when Emily learns that her daughter has been living in the US for years and years now. She had no idea. Elisa agrees to take a polygraph test, and she fails that test badly. Now, I cannot find any information on whether or not Adam Baker took any polygraphs, but I think they can establish that at the time this abduction likely occurred, Adam was either at work or it would have been too narrow of a time frame to say, like, he did something directly to her. The detectives were more focused on Elisa, with Adam being a possible co-conspirator in all of this. They bring in scent dogs to see if they can track any scent, and they, in fact, do. They pick up the scent of human remains in both Elisa and Adam's cars. Investigators also find a couple small drops of blood in Elisa's vehicle. In a completely unrelated case, Elisa Baker is actually arrested and charged with various crimes such as larceny, check forgery, physical threats, and driving with a revoked license. While in jail, Elisa admits that she was the one who wrote the ransom note, so she is given one additional charge: obstruction of justice. Now they suspect she had direct involvement in whatever may have happened to Zahra, so they raise her bond amount. They learn from Elisa's oldest daughter that Elisa told her that she actually planned to just leave North Carolina the day before she was arrested. So the courts now consider Elisa to be a flight risk. They also learned that Elisa has in the past dodged various court appearances for various other unrelated crimes. Now, Elisa had also been in an online relationship with a man in the UK who was repeatedly sending her money, like thousands and thousands of dollars. All of that while she's still married to Adam Baker, raising Zahra. When talking to members of Elisa's family, investigators discover that Elisa had told her family that Zahra had actually died 2 weeks prior to making the 911 call with this fake ransom note. That she had been really, really sick, super ill. She couldn't move. She couldn't do anything. And then she just simply died. She told the family member that her and Adam just found Zahra dead in her bed and they didn't know what to do, that they panicked. She then accuses Adam of taking Zahra and doing this all on his own and dismembering his own daughter, and that she and Adam then hid her body parts in different places, through some parts in dumpsters, through some parts in the woods. She said the death happened back on September 24th, which actually lines up almost with what police learned was the last confirmed sighting of Zahra at the furniture store back on September 22nd, corroborated by outside witnesses who were not Adam and Elisa. But to them, to these furniture store employees, she appeared normal. She appeared to be quite healthy. She did not appear sick whatsoever. Elisa also starts getting letters from some true crime memorabilia collector named Eric Geen. Interesting last name. Not sure if there is any relation to Mr. Ed there at all, but this collector says that in some correspondences with Elisa while she was in jail, she told him, quote, "We really didn't kill her, but what he did after the fact is kind of horrifying, and it makes me scared of him," end quote. Again, implicating Adam in all of it. Elisa then tells her own attorney where they can find Zahra's prosthetic leg, because they had put it in a dumpster. The police actually find that prosthetic leg and confirm through serial numbers from the company in Australia that made this leg that this is, in fact, Zahra's prosthetic leg. By November of 2010, Elisa starts telling them where more body parts can be found, and they search these areas, and they do find several scattered pieces to a body. All of them confirmed to be Zahra's remains. They now know that Zahra Baker is dead. However, they did not find her head at that time. And just saying that out loud makes me sick to my stomach. I've talked a lot about numerous cases where a body is dismembered, but right now I'm picturing this sweet, innocent little child lying lifeless on a table while someone she likely knew and trusted takes an instrument while looking at this child in her face and slowly cuts the head off of this tiny little person. Only an absolute monster could do that. It's disturbing and it makes me just so profoundly sad. In 2012, a human skull was found by a hunter in nearby Caldwell County, North Carolina. It was the head of a child. In early 2013, using dental records and DNA, they were able to positively identify the skull as being Zahra's. Elisa also told police where to find other pieces of evidence like blankets and whatnot that were used in transporting her body. Elisa also had a MySpace page. Remember that? MySpace. I hear they're trying to bring it back. That'd be kind of interesting if they did. But anyway, on her MySpace page, her name was Gothic Fairy 6668, and her page was full of images of skulls and bones. There was also a photo of Zahra on that page that she titled The Dark Child. Nice. They discovered that Elisa had also been a bigamist. She had been married a total of 7 times, including to Adam Baker. She was married to a man named Aaron Young, while also still married to Adam. So in 2011, she has additional charges placed on her for bigamy. Through this, though, they see that Elisa had been using the same site she first met Adam on to still talk to her other husband, Aaron. There were conversations about chainsaw massacre role plays, and that there were interactions on this site in the days surrounding Zahra's death about, quote, doing a murder with a chainsaw, end quote. Aaron Young's relatives would also claim that Zahra had been raped. By who exactly, though, I'm not sure. And then, after said rape, Zahra was struck violently on her head, causing her to die. However, by the time Elisa Baker is officially arrested and charged with the murder of Zahra Baker, her skull had yet to be found, so that story could not be verified. Elisa Baker was indicted by a grand jury for second-degree murder, since they were unable to determine her exact cause of death. Elisa constantly said Adam was involved, and that he was the one to disperse her body parts. He was the one who did all of that. However, the police meticulously looked through cell phone data, and that's when it's discovered that it was only Elisa's cell phone that showed up in all of those locations, and Adam's cell phone never did, not once. As a matter of fact, investigators found no proof that Adam was a part of Zahra's murder or of hiding her body. He, of course, denied any and all involvement and said he would never hurt his baby girl like that. Charges related to Zahra's case have never been placed against Adam Baker, but he was later charged with identity theft unrelated to this case. Actually, and so was the same charges were against Elisa. But he had to have known, right? Adam, he had to have known. If she was killed on September 24th, but not reported missing by anyone, including him, until October 10th, he had to have known. Well, he claims he did not realize his daughter was missing. He said Elisa put a large doll in Zahra's bed, a large human-sized doll, kid size, to trick Adam into thinking his daughter was asleep in that bed. Because of his work schedule, he didn't get to see her much. I just think it's kind of wild to say that for 16 days, over 2 weeks, he never once realized it wasn't her. Did he not have days off? Did he not sit on her bed and, say, I love you, sweetie, give her a kiss? Did he not do any of that? And what about the abuse? Well, it was only ever Elisa who had ever been accused of abusing Zahra, not Adam. But he was there. He said that he was so involved in drugs, doing drugs, being involved in the drug world in general, that he admittedly was not there for Zahra. He was not spending time with her, and therefore he was not protecting her. He was not there for her. While all this abuse was going on, he wasn't stopping it. He wasn't doing anything. Guilty of murder? No. Guilty of being a bad father to Zahra? Absolutely. While awaiting trial, more charges are placed against Elisa. This time they are drug charges. She had been caught distributing prescription drugs illegally. So this chick was committing all sorts of crimes. You know, when she wasn't physically abusing and murdering a 10-year-old child and chopping that child's body up into pieces. Her trial was set to take place in 2012. In April of 2012, the skull was found, but it did not have any additional information that could help determine Zahra's cause of death. So, the story of her being hit violently over her head was more than likely false. Elisa Baker would never go to trial, though. She would end up taking a plea deal for second-degree murder. For the murder of 10-year-old Zahra Baker, she was sentenced to just 15 to 18 years in prison. Elisa Baker has been released from state prison in 2025, but she was immediately put into federal prison to serve time for all of the drug charges. She will be in prison for an additional 10 years for those charges. She has now served her time for murdering a 10-year-old girl. Crazy to think that. Absolutely crazy. She murdered a 10-year-old girl, and she is already done with her sentence. And again, Adam Baker has never been listed as a suspect in this case, and he has never been charged. A 10-year-old girl who battled 2 forms of cancer, had a prosthetic leg, had severe damage to her lungs, who had partial hearing loss. She fought so hard, she was so resilient, and she won the fight. She was such a determined little kid who had to deal with things that most adults don't have to deal with, and she beat it. She was going to take that strength and turn it into something beautiful. She could have done so many incredible things with her life. She had such a powerful story to tell. But sadly, it was not her who got to end up telling that story, because a monster entered her life, and she was failed by everybody else around her who had the power to stop this. She ended up dead. She ended up being cut up into tiny pieces and thrown away like garbage. A child thrown away as if she were trash. And the person who did it, they've now been released, technically, for all of it. The justice system here just continued to fail poor Zahra Baker. And all I can hope now is that Zahra is resting comfortably in peace. But that is it for this case, True Crime Aruni Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you're new here, I'm also very new to the podcast world still, so please follow this podcast. Whatever you need to do, follow it, subscribe to it, or whatever it's called. Please do that. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok and longer form true crime stories on video over on YouTube. You can find all of those links to those places in the link tree, which is in my bio here, wherever you're watching this. But I hopefully am putting it in the description of this podcast, wherever you can find the description of it. It should be in there as well. But if not, you can just search Making a True Crime The same way it's spelled here on this podcast is the exact same way it's spelled on YouTube and TikTok. So follow those places as well if you like. If there's a case you want me to cover, you can send me a quick email. My email is also listed hopefully below. If not, it's mikey@truecrimeerr.com. You just need to email me the name of the case, where it happened, and when it happened. I'll add that case to my list. I pick cases I cover at random, so I cannot promise you when I'll cover that case, but I will get to it eventually. But with that being said, that is it for today's episode, True Crime Rooney. So until the next one, ta-ta for now.